Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Champagne and JD. I'm Andrew Champagne, joined by JD Fox. This is our second edition of this series, and we're really excited to be able to bring this to you. How much longer we're going to be able to do this for? That's anybody's guess. And that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about here at the onset of this show. JD, how's everything going?
Things are going well. I'm moving in the middle of this COVID-19 crisis. That's not
Why?
fun. Well, I mean, this was when we planned to move. Like, you can't reinvent wheels and reinvent dates and do all these things. You kind of have to just stay the course. So that's what we're doing, despite the fact that we've had three different moving companies bail out on us. And yeah, it's been fun. It's been great.
Keep telling yourself that. Maybe it'll be convincing one of these times. Anyway, so the Friday news obviously dominated by the fact that Santa Anita was forced to cancel by some estimates an hour, by some estimates 30 minutes before their Friday card. At any rate, just a less than optimal situation all the way around for everybody, which seems kind of fitting.
Yeah, I mean, horsemen. Maybe they got a little bit more notice. Maybe they didn't. I don't know if. I mean, I would assuming they were already hot walking and ready to go for race one, and getting the horses just raring to go at a certain point, and then they had to stop. So, from a betting perspective, it was obviously bad, but, you got to think about the people on the backside first and foremost, and really concerning, based on, that is a track that has not had any positive tests that we know about on record. We have no jockeys. We have no grooms, no trainers, nobody that we've at least publicly know had it. So obviously, the health board in the county, they made a call and the track had to abide by it. But it was just a tough circumstance given the timing of the whole situation.
Yeah, and one can only wonder how the other tracks in California are going to follow suit, if indeed they are. Golden Gate Fields is scheduled to run on Saturday. Cal Expo scheduled to run. It's a tricky situation and something that we'll certainly be monitoring. However, JD, one of the things that I know you're very excited about, not only are they still running in Australia, a lot of tracks are still running in Australia.
Every track is still running. If you want harness, if you want, horses of the thoroughbred variety, if you're a true degenerate, the greyhounds are still running. Everybody is still running in Australia. And yes, they still have greyhound racing in Australia. I know it's RIP greyhound racing here in the States. This past week, I think, was it. So last track's closing, and they actually closed on the date they were going to close. They didn't have to close early for this crisis, but yeah, it's kind of crazy that they actually have some even sterner warnings from the government, but they've done some things, and I wish the U.S. would do this. So basically, if you've watched any Australian racing this week, they have interview areas set up. So the winning trainer goes to an interview area, has a podium, and everybody can, malt box, Andrew, from back in your day, everybody can get the audio that they need from that. There's no hand-to-hand. There's no, private interviews. It's one time. You get 3 or 4 minutes after the horse has won the race to talk to the trainer. Jockey gets off the mount, does the same thing, and that's it. So they're doing some things that I think are actually probably better for the sport overall from a presentation standpoint and also an access standpoint. But they've made some drastic moves in making sure that they can still run. But again, what we're seeing is horses run back on 5 or 6 days because the trainers are like, hey, I don't need to run. I don't need to run a trial. I don't need to train the horse. I'm just going to race while we can, and we can keep the horse healthy. If the horse is healthy, we're going to run just just as hard as we would in a trial, because the trials in Australia also are pretty much like races. I mean, they break from the barrier. They have collars. I mean, it's crazy. So, what does this mean for the states? With Santa Anita having to close from the health board, I don't think it has a direct impact on anything outside of California. I think California as a state, as a 16, they spent I think 16 or 17 years in the state of California as a resident. It's a state where if one area, especially if it's Southern California, does something, then Northern California is going to follow. So I think we could be seeing the end of California racing here after this weekend. Florida is going to just keep going. They want to fight it sounds like they want to fight this a little bit. And from some of the news reports we've seen this week. So I think we're hopeful on Florida continuing to fight. Hey, Fauner Park had an incredible week, and hats off to Chris Katulak and what he's done since taking over as CEO of that place. And I mean, it could not happen to a better group of people. The Horsemen of Nebraska and Chris Katulak, they had a $2.3 million handle day for.
It was a
Fauner Park.
lot of money, that's for darn sure.
I mean, it's insane. I mean, they've got a jackpot pick 5, I think, that's got a just massive carryover. It's nuts. So, speaking of massive carryovers and Florida, they've decided that there's got to be a mandatory Rainbow Six payout tomorrow for Florida Derby Day, and we are going to do our best to handicap, embarrass ourselves, however we want to look at it. I just, before we get started with this, I will say Andrew puts out some very pragmatic tickets that have a much likelier chance of hitting.
What you're saying is that chalk is my favorite food group. Trust me, I've heard it before. You're not going to offend me.
I'm not going to say that directly because you will always, in the sequence like this, I mean, a pick 4, you do it all the time, but a pick 6 especially, you will find a race and you will chuck a favorite. Now, you did that when we submitted tickets, which was before any scratches were posted here on Friday on the 27th. And, I mean, we might as well get right into it and talk about Newspaper of Record and the big scratch in the first race of the sequence.
Yeah, unfortunately for a lot of people, Newspaper of Record, who would have been a pretty heavy favorite in race number 9 on Saturday at Gulfstream Park, the Sand Spring Stakes, she will scratch. The reason given by Chad Brown is this was supposed to be a prep for some bigger races down the line. Well, those bigger races may or may not happen. The case with Javier Castellano testing positive for COVID-19, that obviously didn't help. She would have needed a newer rider. But from my standpoint, I thought she was a very vulnerable favorite, and I was excited to go 3 deep without using Newspaper of Record in the first leg of the Rainbow Six. I thought that provided a little bit of separator value. Having said that, there is a horse in here that I like a fair bit, though not enough to single. I am going 3 deep. The horse that I would like to focus on is number 7, Get Mother a Rose. Get Mother a Rose has won 5 of her last 8 starts. She started out in the maiden claiming ranks, actually, back up in New York, and has since risen to become a Grade 3 stakes winner. I think she's going to get plenty of pace to run at, and she seems like the one they have to hold off late. She is 6-1 on the morning line. That hit me as a major overlay when I was looking at the form. Unfortunately, we're almost certain to not get that price come post time. My guess is she's going to be 3-1 or 7-2 with the scratch of Newspaper of Record. She may very well go off favorite. I certainly hope she doesn't. But to me, Get Mother a Rose hits me as the one to beat. The other ones I'm going to use in here are number 6, La Signare, who goes third off the layoff for Brendan Walsh. I feel like might be sitting on a pretty big race. And I'll also use number 12, Valedictorian, who may have needed the race in the Honey Fox. She went pretty fast early on that day, and I think she steps forward second off the layoff. So for me, 6, 7, and 12 in race number 9, the Sand Springs. Maybe put a little bit of win money on Get Mother a Rose if we get some value.
Well, you mentioned Valedictorian, and I was going to make I was going to talk about the last race for Newspaper of Record and basically say, I think the horse was trying to play tag with every horse in the field.
Yeah, probably.
I can't figure out how a horse that has just been perfect and had no issues just gets so rank mid-race, gets out of control, bumps into everybody. I mean, if Newspaper Record hadn't have finished last, it was a DQ to last because I think hindering like 8 different horses during the course of the race, and it was a 9-horse field. So, that's kind of, the thing there. And Valedictorian, I was also a play against on Valedictorian. And the Honey Fox, you can mention that, needed the race off the layoff, but the horse that really pressed Valedictorian is back in this race, and there's actually more speed signed on than the Honey Fox. So I was going to chuck out Newspaper of Record. I'm chucking out Valedictorian as well.
Okay.
And my top selection is actually on the outside and of my ticket, which is the 11 High Regard. You're going to have to bear with me on this one because you're probably thinking I'm insane for putting this horse on my ticket in the first place, let alone
I
having
thought
it
that
be
long
rated.
before tonight, JD.
Okay, so High Regard has one turf effort. It was a third in the Dueling Ground Oaks at Kentucky Downs September 8th. If you go back and watch that race, which was contested over a mile and 5/16, that was an effort. That was an absolute light bulb for that horse. Next two starts at Churchill, they try to get on the turf, washed off, and just runs evenly in the dirt. I think this is a case, and this is an angle that I've used pretty successfully before. When you get a horse that has a light bulb angle, most of the time people think about that breaking the maiden. I think sometimes a surface switch, trying a surface for the first time, can do that same thing. And then if that light bulb switches and that horse is like, I love running on this surface, then the dirt efforts I can excuse. Where you might run into some things, obviously this horse hasn't run in a while. This horse has been in Florida and been training in Florida. There's been plenty of turf racing available in Florida. That might be a slight hesitation, but I think High Regard is a horse that you just have to include on your ticket. I kind of agree with you on Get Mother a Rose and Lag Signieri. Echoing your point, some other horses that I've put on the ticket, Zephali, real back marker, struggled in the Albert Stall Memorial at the fairgrounds. I'm willing to toss that race. Made an early move, which isn't normally the style there. I like Joel Rosario getting on the mount and hopefully patient ride from the back there. The 8, East Moon, trying stakes company for the first time, gets Julian Leperoux. 4 races on the turf in 2019, a win in 2 seconds. The win was at Saratoga, your neck of the woods, Andrew. Also, the seconds were at Keeneland and Churchill. So this is a well-placed horse, I think, trying stakes company for the first time, especially with Newspaper of Record out. I think this is the strongest field this horse is obviously run in, but I'm willing to give it a shot. First run on the speed, expecting right behind Valedictorian and the 10 who we haven't talked about in this race, which is the sprinter that's trying a mile for the first time. I'm willing to give East Moon a shot. And then another horse that should be near the pace that I'm willing to give a chance to is Picara the 1. Obviously, you look at the last 2 races, and it's tough to come up with this horse. But you go 3 back, and that just looks like an aberration on paper. But you look at the numbers; they fit with the rest of the horses in this race, and got the trip that the horses wanted. There's been some hindrance in the last 2 races. Not a big excuse that you can see on the forum, but watching the replays, there's something there. I'm going to give Picara a chance, mainly because, Picara is going to be 60-1 in this race, and that's going to blow up the tote board if it hits. So 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, and 11 for me in race 1. We'll go ahead and move directly to the second leg of the pick 6 in race 10, and I have my first of 2 singles on the card, and this is probably my more likely of the 2 singles, and that's the 12 Elizabeth Way. Elizabeth Way just 2 for 2 since arriving stateside, and is 1 in 2 drastically different ways. Broke last and rallied in the maiden race, and then in the very one on February 29th, gate to wire score. I think this is a versatile European horse, and I think this is the coming out party for Elizabeth Way. So I am going with a single, the 12, in race number 10.
We see the Orchid very differently. I am using Elizabeth Way. I feel like she's a must-use. The post is a problem. I worry about a little bit of regression off of the effort in the very one, which was very good, but she had a perfect trip that day. Those fractions were not very fast. Not quite sure what she beat that day compared to what she lines up against here. I'm going to use her, but there are certainly some obstacles that you need to be aware of. You can see on the screen right now, I'm going 5 deep. And JD, my top selection, if you're familiar with the angle of he's due, this one applies here. Number 5, Gentle Ruler, will be ridden by Chris Landeros. Chris Landeros is a smooth 0 for 107 at Gulfstream Park this meet. If any rider was ever due, it is Chris Landeros. Having said that, there are other reasons why I like this horse and why I picked her on top. She was very good last year. She was 6 for 7 in 2019, and that included 4 stakes races. She is at her best going long on turf. It took a little while for those races to come up, but when they did, she was mature, she was ready, and she was super consistent. Look at the Beyer speed figures: 92, 91, 91, 93, 92. It certainly looks like she's ready, especially judging by that big work on March 16th. If she fires her usual race, I think she'll be very tough. Like I said, I'm also using Elizabeth Way. You're single. I'll use number 6, Mean Mary, although I think the 3-1 morning line is an underlay. She's got a lot of early speed, but if one of Mean Mary or Elizabeth Way doesn't fire, it could make things easy for the one that does. I'll also throw in a couple of prices that I thought merited some attention. Number 1, Beale Street, came off a short layoff last time out and rallied to win here at Gulfstream, stretches back out in distance, second off the bench. Michael Matz tends to have these runners ready, and when he gets a runner good, they usually stay good. Michael Matz, John Velasquez at 15 to 1 on the morning line. Sign me up. I will also include number 8, Bo Bell, who ran up against some very good horses last year. You look at the race 2 back in the Flower Bowl. She was 5th behind Sister Charlie. She was beaten less than 2 lengths in the Zagora at Aqueduct the next time out. Has been off a little bit of a layoff, but I feel as though she is a contender if she can channel the form that she showed last summer and fall. So again, I'm going 5 deep in here. Gentle Ruler is my top pick, but by no means am I confident enough to single or go shallow in here. 1, 5, 6, 8, and 12 for me in the grade 3 Orchid. I also think you need to spread a little bit in race number 11. That is the grade 2 Gulfstream Park Oaks. These are the 3-year-old fillies, and we've got some familiar faces showing up here, especially if you watched the grade 2 Devonadale earlier in the meet. Tonalist Shape and Spice's Nice ran 1-2 in that race. They both come back. I use them both. Spice is Nice is number 5. Tonalist Shape is number 9. But Tonalist Shape is 5 to 2 on the morning line. That hits me as an underlay, especially with some new faces showing up. And my top pick is actually number 4, Lake Avenue. Lake Avenue needed the busher off of the layoff. She was off 3 months, and that wasn't really her preferred route of ground. She is bred up and down to go as long as these races will be carded. 2 turns is going to be right up her alley. She's second off the layoff for some great connections. And maybe the Devonadale just wasn't as good as we thought. I feel like we might get a little bit of a price on Lake Avenue in this spot. She's 9 to 2 on the morning line. And I will also use number 7, Lucrezia, who loved 2 turns last time out at Tampa Bay Downs. She won an ungraded stakes race at that route, and she has been working lights out for trainer Arnaud Delacour. This is a class test for her, to be sure, jumping in off of ungraded company. But at her likely price, with the work tab that she has, she's got to be on the ticket. So 4, 5, 7, and 9 for me in race number 11, the Gulfstream Park Oaks. JD, who do you like?
You like Lake Avenue, do you?
I do. I like Lake Avenue a lot, and not just because when I was in Saratoga, I used to work on Lake Avenue. The Saratogians' offices were at 20 Lake Avenue, right across the street from the parting glass, which was very, very handy.
I can only imagine that was handy for you. I like Lake Avenue a little bit more than you do
Really?
because I'm singling Lake Avenue.
Whoa!
And here's the reason why. I really look at last year and the two wins that Lake Avenue had, and they were as dominant a wins as we saw at Aqueduct the whole meet in the winter. You have to go back and say, okay, what happened March 7th, and really, I think needed 3 months needed the race, and I'm willing to throw out a performance when you can make an equation like this happen. So, in the maiden win, won by 12 3/4, and beat Kansas Kiss by 14 lengths. Came back on March 7th and lost to Kansas Kiss by 9 lengths. So when you're talking about a 23 length difference in the course of, basically 4 months between two horses, I mean, they're well-bred horses, quality horses, I'm willing to give Lake Avenue that excuse. I really think that Lake Avenue can go for days and is bred to go for days and does not need to lead here. We haven't seen Lake Avenue off the pace at all. It's been lots of ones on the form. But I think in this spot, with Rosario up the first time, I think we're going to see a patient ride, and I think Lake Avenue has the breeding for the distance. And, Godolphin, they know what they're doing with not only the breeding operation side of things here, but also the placement with Bill Mott in this race. I think it's perfect. And you look at the first race in 2020 wasn't a big one for Lake Avenue. I'm expecting a big race out of Lake Avenue, singling in leg 3. So we're halfway home in the pick 6, and I have singled twice, and you have yet to single. So it's very interesting to see where we're going. We did work on a $100 budget. We should have mentioned that up front.
Yes,
because this is a very tough sequence, and it is a mandatory payout. So what we're really looking at here is there's dead money there, so everything's going to pay out a little bit more. So I'm swinging the home run with my 2 picks, and we're going to see a very deep ticket here going on, and we're going to go ahead and start the discussion now as we go to race number 12, which is the Pan American for 4-year-olds and up, going 1.5 miles on the turf. Really in this race, I see this as a gigantic spread race. Really, Zulu Alpha, morning line 3 to 5. I don't see any speed whatsoever signed onto this contest. It's very rare if you guys follow Timeform USA at all, and I do follow Timeform USA along with a couple other places, and their speed ratings for the race. They have a gray bar on this race, and you almost never see that. And the gray bar, what it means, is no speed. There is no speed in this race. Zulu Alpha might be closer than we've ever seen Zulu Alpha in a race recently. But I just see an even run from Zulu Alpha. So I'm including on the ticket, but I've got some big shots here. Channel Cat obviously has dueled with Zulu Alpha at various points last year, especially in the summer. I think Channel Cat, coming off of a really tough performance in the Pegasus turf, I think with Rosario on board, can get back to the Channel Cat of last year, having a rough 5-year-old campaign, but we'll see where he goes. I've got the 2, Bema's Boy, coming off of a good second place in the Grade 3 Connolly. I think Bema's Boy is going to be close to the pace and has a chance to be the pace setter in this race. And if it's not the 2, I think it's going to be the 6 Galleon Mast. And you're saying, okay, hey, the Galleon Mast has been in slow races the last 3 and has not taken the lead. But there's slow races, and then there's this race. And then we're going to go to the outside. Zulu Alpha, again, the deep back marker. You're used to seeing Zulu Alpha make that one run, and it's usually late in the ball game, and it works most of the time getting Gaffleon up, have to include. And then the 10 Focus Group, a bit of an unknown, leaving the Chad Brown barn for Christophe Clement. Gets Luis Saez up for the first time. Really interesting to see off the layoff how Focus Group is doing. Has some decent works and a good work pattern. I think Focus Group is going to be a long shot that has a chance to be second or third, sit a perfect trip, make one run, and deliver. So I'm going 1, 2, 6, 9, and 10 in race number 12. And Andrew, I have a feeling you might go with something completely different here.
Here's what I like so far. What I like so far is there are rational ways in which we could both be alive halfway through this sequence. We share the top pick of Lake Avenue. I'm using your single in the second leg, and you're using 2 of my 3 horses in your 5 deep spread in the first leg. We see this race completely differently. You had mentioned you think number 9 Zulu Alpha might be a little closer to the pace. I think there's reason to believe that that's going to be the case. You look at the race September 7th of last year. That was the Grade 3 Kentucky Turf Cup at Kentucky Downs. I know that's a quirky course. I understand that there are certain variables in play there. Having said that, Zulu Alpha was 3 lengths off the lead at the first call, one going away that day by more than 3 lengths. The horse that ran second that day was Arklow. Arklow won next time out. That was a good field that he lined up against in the Kentucky Turf Cup. And what I think separates him from some of the rest in here, he's 4 for 5 at Gulfstream Park. And the one loss that he had was going a mile and an eighth, which is just shorter than he wants to go. Zulu Alpha seems like he's in career best form. Obviously, you look at the Pegasus Turf, you look at the Mac Diarmida. He's 2 for 2 this year. I think there's a really good shot he's 3 for 3. And in sequences like this, you have to single somewhere. To me, based on class, based on figures, based on the fact that he's a little bit more flexible than he might appear on paper, to me, he looks like he towers over this group. You mentioned a horse that I like a little bit underneath if you're playing vertical exotics, and that's number 10, Focus Group. Focus Group loves going long. I love the good barn to good barn transition. Yes, he's been off since October, but I think there's a real chance Focus Group could sit a trip. And if they go a little bit faster than we think they might, I feel like he's the one that could potentially be able to pick up the pieces and hit the board at a bit of a price for you contest players out there. For me, though, in the Rainbow Six, it's pretty simple. If Zulu Alpha does not win, I lose. Zulu Alpha is a single for me. JD, you have him on the ticket, but you've gone a little bit deeper. So again, still a little bit of room for both of us to advance as we head to the fifth leg of the sequence, the Grade 3 Appleton. And for my money, this was the toughest race of the entire sequence for me to handicap because all of these horses sort of seem exactly the same. That leads me to want to go price shopping. One of my favorite angles shows up here. I learned this from Aaron Vercruyze, formerly of HRTV and XBTV. Todd Pletcher's got 2 in here. Todd Pletcher saddles number 10, Sambaye, who will likely be the favorite based off of his win in the Canadian turf. I'm using Sambaye. If the race breaks down, I feel like Sambaye is the one that picks up the pieces. However, my top selection and my price play of the sequence is number 7, Social Paranoia. If you look at his campaign last year, he had a sneaky good year in 2019. He went 2 for 6, but after breaking his maiden in March over this turf course, with a 96 Beyer speed figure, he raced exclusively in stakes company. He finished the year with a win at Kentucky Downs. God, we're saying Kentucky Downs a lot. It's almost like that's a really good meet. He ran second in the Belmont Derby going a mile and a quarter. He cuts back to a mile for this race, but I don't think that's going to be a problem. If you look at his shorter races from when he was a 2-year-old, he ran second and third behind a horse named 40 Under. And that was when 40 Under was pretty darn good. I believe Jeremiah Englehart trained that one. Some Like It Hot Brown was second in the Pilgrim. He's a multiple stakes winner. And I think Social Paranoia, who is bred to get better as he gets older, gets the trip that he wants here, sitting just off the speed, primed for big connections. Todd Pletcher trains. We will get a rider change because Javier Castellano is off his mounts. Having said that, Social Paranoia is one in here that hits me as a must-use. However, I am going to use several others. I'll use number 1, English B. I'll use number 4, Balarox, who I know my friend Gino Bacola likes a lot in this spot, and for pretty good reason. He's got a lot of back class. Social Paranoia and Sambier we mentioned. And I will also use the horse that, in my opinion, is the wild card in this race, and that's number 12, El Tormenta, who was last seen running 6th in the Breeders' Cup Mile. 2-back beat got Stormy in the Grade 1 Woodbine Mile. The post is a killer. He hasn't run since November, but if El Tormenta is at his best, I think he's another that presents some pretty strong win chances here. Still, though, you can say that about a lot of horses in this race, and that's why I went 5 deep. 1, 4, 7, 10, 12 for me in the Appleton. And JD, I'm curious to see how you handicap this race because I found it a real puzzler, and if we had a bigger bankroll or I had a third single elsewhere, I may very well have hit the all button here.
I started backwards with my ticket. I did the Florida Derby. I came to this race. I originally scratched out all and tried to figure out a way to make it work. I can make cases for a million different horses here, and I know that's not the field size. I'm going 5 deep as well. My top selection's Murad, and really I think this is a case of Murad seems to be finally back to the Murad we saw really early on in his career. That really strong last 200 meters that we started to see towards the beginning of the career, almost getting up in the Hall of Fame. Remember that race at Saratoga for Irad Ortiz, and the last race with Paco Lopez losing to Balahag Rocks in that allowance event at Gulfstream Park. I really think this is the time to shine, and it's a big mount for Dylan Davis, and I feel like there has to be a reason that Dylan Davis drove from New York to Florida to work to actually I shouldn't say work, but to pick up this mount for Joe Rosino. They don't work together. I mean, this is just kind of an out of the blue thing, and I think we might be tipping the hand a little bit in terms of Murad. I don't know how much you like. I don't think most people like that jockey agent trainer game as a handicapping angle, but this time I like a horse, and there happens to be a positive angle with that as well. I'm 4, 5, 8, 10, 12. We'll talk about Dr. Edgar the 8 just because you really have to go back and dig a little bit. But I'm going to point out some Dylan Davis rides at Belmont in the poker last year. That was about as hard a trying effort as you're going to see. And this horse, when in the right company and at the right distance, is as hard a trier as you're going to see. Obviously, the 4-star Dave was a little tough last year, and that kind of turned the year a little sideways for Dr. Edgar. Not getting any younger at age 7, but I really think with Paco Lopez up, we're going to see Dr. Edgar being the early pace setter and going back to a mile. I really do think Dr. Edgar has a shot here, at least going to get a lot of calls in this race early and often. I agree with you on Samba Ye. El Tormenta is kind of an interesting one for me. Obviously, I'm going to favor a Woodbine horse, as that's one of the big circuits that I follow, and really was disappointed in the Breeders' Cup Turf Mile, the TVG Breeders' Cup Turf Mile, however you want to say it. After a really strong effort in the Woodbine Mile, Julian Leperoux here I think is a positive move, and really it's a barn that you don't hear a lot with Gail Cox, but when she's got a runner that is ready to go, puts them and finds the right spots for them. You look at for Gulfstream Park, and I believe it's a career number. I didn't want to dig out the, I think I dug back all the way to 2013 and didn't see a win. But I do like El Tormenta here, and El Tormenta is going to be right on the pace and should have enough to finish even off of the 147-day layoff. So 4, 5, 8, 10, and 12. And now we've come to the moment we've been waiting for, which is the Florida Derby. And obviously, we've seen each other's picks ahead of time here, and we see this race slightly differently because you have a really strong opinion on a horse, and I share some of that opinion. But there's a horse that I've been on since the beginning, and it's been a lightly raced horse, and I don't see the morning line being the right number for it, and that's Governor Morris. So we're 5, 7, and 12 here. I mean, this is not going outside the box at all in this race, really. I think this is going to be a ticket for somebody that goes 3 deep in this race. I think you're going to see 5, 7, and 12 from a lot of people. But Governor Morris, I know, ran at Tampa last time in a optional allowance field that was better than what it showed on paper. It was a field of 5, but it's ran on okay. It's got some talent to it, but the second place effort, obviously at almost even money in the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity last year, really was disappointing. Maxfield, pulling away when it looked like Governor Morris had a shot at the top of the stretch. But I still go back to that Saratoga race. I know it was 5.5 furlongs, that debut on September 2nd. You follow Saratoga. Governor Morris could have won that race by about 37 lengths if Governor Morris wanted to. I still think we have seen just a hint of the potential in this very interestingly bred son of Constitution, who was a $600,000 sale purchase. I really like Governor Morris in this race. Tiz the Law. I do think Tiz the Law is kind of a wild card here. I think Tiz the Law might be the most talented horse. I don't know where Tiz the Law is going to sit here. I think Tiz the Law could very well be on the lead. I think Tiz the Law could very well sit back. I just don't have a good suspicion on the trip that Tiz the Law is going to be. So I'm including, but not a horse that I can single here with Governor Morris. And Ete Indian, really, that Fountain of Youth performance, a lot of people are writing that off and writing that field off. You look at Candy Tycoon and as seen on TV, who were well past 8 lengths. I mean 8.5 officially, but I mean it could have been a much wider margin. I mean these are horses that are not respected in the morning line and probably aren't going to be respected tomorrow. But you have to look at the performance and the performance in the Holy Bull. That was a pretty good effort. So we're going 5, 7, and 12 in the Florida Derby. And Andrew, I know you're going a little differently than I am, but including a horse I have.
You know what happens when you fight the law? The law wins.
It does. It does
Yes.
a decent amount of the time, yeah.
Yeah. So on a serious note, though, Tiz the Law got an education last time out in the Grade 3 Holy Bull. If you watch that race, jockey Manny Franco was clearly trying to teach Tiz the Law a lot. The form says the horse won by 3 lengths with a 100 buyer speed figure. He could have won by triple that. He made several moves in the running of the race. If you look at the running lines, the running line says wrangled at the break, steadied, and lugged in. Manny Franco was trying to teach the horse how to overcome some trouble, and then the horse that ran second that day comes back and smashes the field in the Fountain of Youth. To me, Tiz the Law is one of the most talented 3-year-olds in the entire country. I respect Governor Morris. I liked Governor Morris a lot dating back to his debut at Saratoga, as you mentioned. I think there's a lot of talent there. I respect number 9, Independence Hall, who ran second last time out in the Sam Davis behind Sol Valenti, who came back to run second in the Tampa Bay Derby to frank that form a little bit. I respect a couple of other horses in here, and I was really hoping number 4, Soros, would run because I thought Soros had a big shot to hit the board. As it turned out, he's one of a couple that will likely scratch out of this race. Your likely scratches in this race are Soros, number 6, Ajaweed, and number 11, Sassy But Smart. We're likely looking at a 10-horse field in the Florida Derby. But I think Tiz the Law is just by far and away the best horse in here. He could regress a little bit off of that 100 buyer speed figure and still win this race comfortably. I don't think regression is in the cards. I think the teaching days are over with Tiz the Law, and I think Tiz the Law gets unleashed in a big, big way in this spot, especially because this is traditionally a Kentucky Derby prep. There's not really a race to prep for right now. Maybe you go to the Arkansas Derby the first Saturday in May, who knows? This isn't a prep race anymore. There's nothing to leave in the tank, and I think Tiz the Law is going to empty the tank and put this field away in a big, big way. It is why this horse is my second single on my Rainbow Six ticket. If we get to this point, it's Tiz the Law or nothing at all. So, JD, if you'd like to put up both tickets here, we'll compare these tickets, and there is at least some room for both of us to hit here. That's the thing that I like about this, the fact that we've approached this sequence in some pretty different ways. You've included some bombs. I'm standing with a couple of horses that will likely be very short prices and hoping to catch a price or two along the way. But there are ways where we can both be right. Of course, there are, of course, ways in which we can both get blown out of the water in legs 1 or 2. But, that's horse racing for you.
Yeah, I want to talk about Soros real quick before we do that because we still don't have overnight scratches from Gulfstream. Soros is still technically in the field. Soros finished 5th in an allowance race today. I want to see Soros run. Throwback, old school, 1 day of rest. Let's go. Let's do it. I know.
Rick Dutrow would approve.
I know that's not how horses are bred to run these days, but we're sitting here on Friday night, and the horse hasn't scratched yet. Give me some hope. Okay, enough with that. We'll throw both tickets up here, and I removed my ugly mug first here. I've got a $90 play, and again, we're attacking this from a $100 budget. And as Andrew mentioned, you can pick your path here. We have enough overlap for both of us to hit this Rainbow Six. But I'm obviously dreaming, as I always am, and really searching for big value and hoping to get it. Now, of course, with both tickets up there, and we'll leave them a few minutes, I can't actually play this ticket because of Arizona's wonderful issues with Monarch. So if somebody plays this ticket, I don't expect somebody to play one of my tickets blind, even after this great 35 minutes of discussion on my ticket. But if someone plays a ticket that includes my horses that end up going there, I really I'm rooting for you because personally, I'm going to be devastated if this ticket comes home. I'm going to be absolutely devastated with the amount of work that's put in. So, of the two tickets, I'm rooting for Andrew's because I know Andrew can actually bet on his ticket.
I'll tell you what, though, JD, much respect to you because that's the ultimate for the love of the game move. You can't play this ticket thanks to people who are in politics who have decided they know what's best for the Arizona citizen. Yet you still handicap the sequence. You gave a ticket out for our viewers, and you're hoping that people play it. If that isn't something done for the love of the game, I don't know what is. And yes, I will be playing this sequence. There's a lot of very good action coming up at Gulfstream Park. 14 races. They start early in the morning, get tied on. Post time for the Florida Derby is listed at 6 p.m. Hopefully they don't drag. Hopefully they get the card in, given what we saw at Santa Anita, especially since we both put together a lot of work to be able to put these tickets together, put the graphics together, talk about them on air, spent time uploading this to the web. So naturally, it's 6-5 and pick them whether or not they're going to run. Kidding aside, though, it's a great card. Dive in at your ADW of choice. And JD, to close this out, it's not necessarily a complete gambling blackout for you. We're going to start a sequence called The Ticket JD Can Actually Play. Now, if you'd like to give a little bit of exposition to this, go ahead, but I'm interested in hearing about this.
So, my wagering menu for tomorrow in Arizona, and listen, in episode 1, we went over all of the Arizona problems right now. I don't want to go over and spend another 10 minutes on that, and because we're already running dangerously low on time. I have Oakland, I have Los Alamitos, and I have all of Australia. And obviously we're recording, and I'm missing some Rose Hill action tonight, which is
sorry about that, Chief.
Paining me, and I want to see it. But obviously a ticket I can play, I'm going to go to Australia. Now, the funny part here is I think this is more enjoyable if I just put this ticket out there and not explain anything about it. I think I just want to put the ticket up. I just want to stare at it for a minute. See, hey, if you want to spend $20 and have some fun on some horses with pedigrees that you're never going to see again in your life, running at distances and on tracks you're never going to see in your life, I'm telling you, these are some fun horses that are going to be in the lead at varying points in the race. Whether they come home, we'll see. But these are all either really low-level open or maiden races here in the early pick 3 at Australia Sea Sale.
Oh, boy!
8:05 p.m. Pacific time. I did you guys a favor. I got you guys an East Coast ticket that starts before midnight. It's still going to be the 28th when you play that ticket and watch race 1 and race 2. Race 3 is going to be the next day, but you'll get over it. We're going 2 deep, 5-12. And then single. We're playing, again, base denomination in Australia for a pick 3 is 20 cents. I don't need 20 cents. Throw $10 at it. That's a $20 ticket. You're welcome when that comes home. And at $20, if that comes home, that is going to be $300 in your pocket, guaranteed. Andrew, that's all I want to say about that.
I don't know if you can see this, but my jaw is pretty much on the floor here. The way that you sold that and your enthusiasm and your passion, I feel as though I need an intervention banner that I can just pull off the screen and grab here and hold up for everybody to read. But having said that, if you hit a pick 3 like that you're playing not quite cold, but pretty darn close, you're going to wind up with something really nice that you can put on the wall behind you in that new house.
And the other key there is I need people to bet into it because I need a pool.
Yeah, you do. You don't want to be betting $20 and getting back $20 when you hit.
But we went over last week's Rose Hill card, and I'll end on this note. I wheeled back my pick 4 play, if you followed us on Twitter, into a pick 3 after getting knocked out in the first leg. And I got $102 back going 2 of 3 on that pick 3 for $16. $16 turned into over $101, cashing 2 of 3. So, hey, Australia does some crazy things. Actually, the pick 4 at Rose Hill Gardens, which was a big, again, Last week we talked about it. There were 3 grade 1s and a grade 3. The pick 4 paid 3 of 4, and the 3 of 4 pay was over $2,500 on a 20-cent wager.
Whoa.
And I wasn't that wrong. I was just a little wrong.
That's the horse player axiom, if ever I heard one. I wasn't all wrong. I was just a little wrong. But in Australia, you can get paid off for that because the pools can be sort of, to put it politely, warped. Because you don't see 2 of 3. You don't see 3 of 4 unless it's bomb, 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 bomb in the States. But JD, being able to get paid in Australia and being able to bet on racing in Australia with that pick 3 at Australia, not A, not B, but Australia C. What track is Australia C?
That's going to be Sale. That's going to be Sale. So, again, it's based on post-time start, A, B, C, and D in Australia for the North American pool. So it's not a rating of the tracks. It's only A will always – the race 1A will always start first. Race 1B will follow race 1C, race 1D in order. So oftentimes you will see, and another Australia explanation, because everybody's playing Australia. Ed DeRosa's playing Australia tonight, Andrew. I don't know if you saw this.
Did he make a grid?
No, he didn't make a grid.
Boo!
No, exactly.
Boo! If Ed DeRosa didn't make a grid, it doesn't count as him playing Australia. I'm making an executive ruling on that. That's the next segment that we need. Andrew's executive decisions.
Oh, we're going stir crazy. It's Florida Derby Day tomorrow, and it's probably going to be Florida Derby Day when you watch this. So I think it's about time to sign off episode 2 of Champagne and JD. Follow me on Twitter at Horse Tickets, and Andrew, tell them where to follow you. Up there.
Right up there, at Andrew Champagne. And I'm very happy that I picked the right arm to point up with. Thought I was going to go here from that and have to go, whoa, whoa, whoa. But at any rate, at Andrew Champagne for me on Twitter, at Horse Tickets on Twitter for my buddy JD Fox. That will conclude things for the second episode of Champagne and JD. Thanks very much for listening. We really hope you're finding some ways to enjoy yourself during this turbulent time that we haven't really seen before. Please be smart. Please be safe. Wash your hands. Practice social distancing. All that fun stuff. And get tied on for a really fun Saturday at Gulfstream Park, especially because we don't know when a card like this is going to happen in the foreseeable future. Might be the last card like this for a very, very, very long time. So fire with both barrels at your ADW of choice. We really hope you have enjoyed this analysis. I'm Andrew Champagne for my partner JD Fox. We're signing off. Have a great day, everybody. Let's make some money.